How do conversion factors for area work with the metric system? Well, they work in a way that's very similar uh, to what we saw for working with linear measurements. Right, so what I want to do here is I want to derive a conversion factor. Now remember, with linear measurements, the conversion factor is always a multiple of 10, right? And that tells you how much you move the decimal point around. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to take this conversion factor. 1 meter is equal to 10 decimeters. And I want to see, well, okay, how can I turn this into square meters and square decimeters? Well, we could do this in a similar way to what we did with the imperial and US measurements, where we drew a square and we saw how many squares it took to fill it in. All right, but I'm going to take and you could do that here, absolutely. But just to kind of give you another perspective on this, I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to just do our dimensional analysis, just like we were doing with all of the other conversions that we've done, in particular with the imperial and US systems. 1 square meter. Well, what's it mean to square something? Well, you multiply it by itself. All right, so if I wanted to convert meters to decimeters, how does our unit conversion process work? Well, the decimeters number goes on top, and the meters number goes on the bottom. Now, this is good, but it doesn't get us quite to where I want to be because this only canceled one of the meters. Okay, well, suppose we do it again. Put another 10 decimeters per meter. Those meters cancel. And all I'm left with, if we multiply that out, is 100 decimeters times decimeters. But now apply the same reasoning here, right? Decimeters times decimeters is decimeters squared. And that's what I wanted. Now I've got my conversion factor. Now you remember if you do out your line of all the prefixes, right? Meters and decimeters are right next to each other. So when we're going from meters to decimeters, that was one step. It was a change of a factor of 10, so we moved the decimal point one place. Okay, but look at what we have now. Going from square meters to square decimeters is a change by a factor of 100. So that's almost the same thing, but instead of moving one decimal place, it's going to move the decimal point two places. So to convert between metric areas, we're going to do the exact same thing with counting positions, right, on our line of prefixes and moving the decimal point, only now we're going to move the decimal point two places for every step to get from one unit to the next instead of one place. So I've got an example here for us to look at, and just like we did when we were doing linear measurements, I've written out my prefixes in order down here, and I've just added a square to them. It helps to add that in because it's kind of a reminder that you're not going to move the decimal point one unit, you're going to move it two places for each step on the line here. So we want to take 225 square centimeters and get that to square meters. So I'm looking at my list. Square centimeters to square decimeters to square meters. That's two steps, which is going to mean four decimal places. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to have to backfill a 0 there. So this will be 0.0225 square meters. And it got smaller, right? And I'm thinking, okay, a square centimeter is pretty small, and a square meter is quite a bit bigger. So, yeah, it would take quite a few square centimeters to fill up a whole square meter. That makes sense. Okay, so how about this one? How many square kilometers are there in 5,000 square meters? I'm going to do the same thing, right? I'm going to do 5,000 square meters. And I'm looking down here, right? I want to go from meters to square kilometers. That's 3 steps, which is going to mean moving 6 decimal places. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this will be 0.005 square kilometers. So in the next lecture, we're going to continue again that same pattern that we saw when we were talking about linear measurements. Now that we've gone over the U.S. imperial approach and the metric approach, we're going to continue using these conversion factors and dimensional analysis to look at ways to convert back and forth between the two systems.